Welcome to Nature Wave YouTube channel.
Lake Garda is the largest lake in Italy. It is a popular holiday location in northern Italy, between Brescia and Milan to the west, and Verona and Venice to the east. The lake cuts into the edge of the Italian Alps, particularly the alpine sub-ranges of the Garda Mountains and the Brenta Group. Glaciers formed this alpine region at the end of the last ice age. The lake and its shoreline are divided between the provinces of Brescia, to the southwest, Verona, southeast, and Trentino, north. In Roman times the lake was known as Benicus, and by some it was revered as god Benicus, the personification of the lake, sometimes associated with the cult of Neptune. Characteristic of Garda is the limited size of the hydrographic basin, 2,290 square kilometers or 880 square miles, compared to the lake's surface. At a length of 52 kilometers of the lake corresponds the 95 kilometers of the basin, while the respective widths are 116 kilometers and 42 kilometers. The major peaks are Presenella, 3,556 meters or 11,667 feet, and Adamello, 3,554 meters or 11,660 feet. Morphologically, the Garda hydrographic basin can be divided into four areas: the plain of about 200 square kilometers, the lake surface of about 370 square kilometers, the western portion of about 500 square kilometers, and the eastern one of approximately 1,040 square kilometers. Around Lake Garda there are 26 comuni, the most populated being Desenzano del Garda, 29,179 inhabitants, followed by Arco, 17,857, and Riva del Garda, 17,518. Desenzano del Garda, Riva del Garda, Lazise, Salo, Malsacene, Toscolano Maderno, Limone sul Garda, Torri del Benaco, Peschiera del Garda. Furthermore, in the second half of the 20th century, a real entertainment industry was formed along Lake Garda as a series of parks were built. The most important is Gardaland, the biggest Italian theme park which hosts numerous tourist attractions. Lake Garda is also a popular destination for sport tourism. Riva, Torboli and Campione are famous for winds that attract people who practice sail, windsurf and kiteboard. The particularly mild climate favors the growth of some hardy Mediterranean plants, including the olive tree, parasol pine, Mediterranean cypress, Chinese windmill palm and Canary Island date palm. Some hardy citrus trees, such as hardy lemons and satsuma, can also be found, which are extremely rare at this latitude, 46 degrees north. Ship transport is provided by Navigazione Laghi. A daily ferry service connects major towns on the eastern and western shores of Lake Garda. The service runs from Desenzano del Garda to Riva del Garda, via Peschiera del Garda, Salo and Malsacene. Buses are faster alternatives to ferry services. On the eastern coast, ATV, Verona Transport Company, provides at least 5 daily bus routes between Verona and Garda, with one route extending to Riva del Garda. Trentino Trasporti provides daily bus routes between Riva del Garda and Rovereto or Trento. On western coast, SAIA provides regular bus services between Desenzano del Garda, Salo, Gargnano and Brescia. The lake has also numerous small islands and 5 main ones, the largest being Isola del Garda. Nearby to the south is San Biagio Island, also known as the Isola dei Conigli, Island of the Rabbits. Areas around Lake Garda, inhabited since prehistoric times, are an environment of great naturalistic value, with vegetation typical of the Mediterranean climate such as olive trees, vines, lemon trees, agave and other plants. During the spring wildflowers such as primroses, iris, violets and red lilies are born, while in summer some bloom varieties of wild orchids. Thanks to the presence of protected areas, hares and small wild mammals, water birds and birds of prey survive, while ponds and ditches are populated by pike, carp and the region can be reached directly via the Milan-Venice Railway, with Desenzano Sirmione and Peschiera Railway Station. Lake Garda is also served by a road network that runs along the entire lake and is made up of the following infrastructures. State Highway 11 Padana Superior, from Desenzano del Garda to Pesqueira del Garda. State Highway 45 bis Garzana Occidental, from Salo to Riva del Garda. State Highway 249 Garzana Oriental, from Pesqueira del Garda to Riva del Garda. State Highway 572 de Salo, from Desenzano del Garda to Salo. The First Italian War of Independence saw an initial slow advance of the Piedmontese army towards the lake. At the news of its approach, Salo rebelled against the Austrians, several soldiers were taken prisoner and the Austrian insignia demolished. During the events also Riva del Garda and several towns on the Veronese side rose up. The Austrian army was forced to retreat to the Mincio line due to the advance of the Piedmontese troops, and on April 4 the Austrians were driven out of Lonato and Desenzano, while the Piedmontese attempt to conquer Pesqueira was unsuccessful. After the Piedmontese defeat of Custoza, the pre-war status quo restored. In 1859 the Second War of Independence began. On June 18 the hunters of the Alps managed to enter Salo, from where Giuseppe Garibaldi wanted to leave to continue the advance towards Veneto, crossing the lake with some boats, but new orders forced him to move the troops in the Brescia valleys. However, the Italian troops managed to sink an Austrian steamship before leaving Salo. Shortly after, the Battle of Solferino and San Martino was won by the Franco-Savoyards and Pesqueira was besieged. With the armistice of Villafranca the war was put to an end. Garda returned to be a land border, on this occasion between Italians and Austrians. During the Third War of Independence Garibaldi returned to Salo again, and from there he invaded Trentino. Meanwhile, the Austrians repeatedly bombed Gargnano and tried to impose their dominance. Despite the humiliating Italian defeat, in 1866 Veneto was finally handed over to the Kingdom of Italy, except for the northern part of the lake which still remained under Austrian control. During the First World War, towns on Lake Garda were bombed several times. On July 23, 1915 the first aerial bombardment took place in the area, when Riva del Garda was hit. The steamers of the lake were requisitioned by the Italian army and were re-equipped as warships. The following year some guns and artillery batteries were installed, but on February 20, 1916 Riva was hit again. The following day 3 Austrian planes bombed Desenzano, while on February 27 bombs fell in Nago and Torboli. In 1918 Riva was bombed again. Later Limone and, once again, Riva were targeted, but with the end of the war Trentino also passed into Italian hands. Until 1943 the events of Second World War did not particularly affect the Lake region, but following the birth of the Italian Social Republic the German command settled in Limone and, on October 10, that of Benito Mussolini in Gargnano. The Ministry of Defense was located in Desenzano, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Popular Culture and the press agencies settled in Salo, which became the capital of the newborn German puppet republic. Fasano was the seat of the German embassy and Gardone of the Japanese one, while the Ministry of the Interior and the seat of the Republican Fascist Party, PFR, found accommodation in Maderno. The upper part of the lake was also occupied militarily by the Wehrmacht. In April 1945 the lake was freed by the Allies and later became part of the Republic of Italy.